the Peña Rim Grand Prix at Barcelona. The result was a Ferrari win in the order of Ascari, Serafini and Taruffi. Reg Parnell and Peter Walker had retired their BRMs in their Grand Prix debut. During the closed season, Alfa Romeo and Ferrari continued to develop their cars, and in 1951 they continued where they'd left off in 1950. Alfa were trying to squeeze the last drops of power from the magnificent straight-8 engine, and they'd now fitted two-stage superchargers and bigger fuel tanks. They experimented with a de Dion rear axle to replace the swing axles in an effort to transfer as much of their hard-earned power onto the road as possible. In Type 159 form, the engine produced 404 brake horsepower and consumed fuel at the rate of half a kilometre per litre, using a very rich mixture to give better internal cooling. Even with a full 295-litre tank, 2 or more pit stops would be needed to complete a full Grand Prix distance. Ferrari, meanwhile, had developed a new 24-plug cylinder head for their 4.5-litre. Despite this, he withdrew his entry from the Silverstone International Trophy at the last moment, but Prancing Horse Honour was upheld by Reg Parnell in the Thin Wall Special, a modified 4.5-litre car. In the first heat, Fangio ran out the winner, but Parnell had driven a fine race to finish second. The second heat went to Farina's Alfa from teammate Sanisi at a faster pace. The final was eagerly awaited, with the prospect of a battle between Farina, Fangio and Parnell. As the cars were wheeled out against the backdrop of threatening clouds, it started to rain with that devastating suddenness for which Silverstone is now infamous. The course was flooded with rain and hail, and the darkness was lit up by lightning. Visibility for the drivers was nil, and cars were going off in all directions. Bonetto led for Alfa on the first lap, but was passed by Parnell and Duncan Hamilton's Talbot. Fangio had worked his way up to third when the race was stopped after 5 laps, with Reg Parnell declared the winner. Conditions were no better at the Swiss Grand Prix at Bern. Fangio made the most of the conditions, leading throughout. Then, at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, Farina, inspired by a recent victory at Dundrod, was in tremendous form. Villaraci took the lead for Ferrari, but Farina soon passed him and went on to win, with Ascari second and Villaraci third. Round 4 of the 1951 world title was at Reims in the Champagne district of France, and battle was rejoined between Alfa Romeo and Ferrari. Fangio and Ascari both made good starts and battled for the lead, but both retired in the early stages, so Fangio took over Fagioli's car and Ascari the car of Gonzalez, and Farina was forced to retire. Eventually, Fangio took the lead to win from Ascari and Villaraci. The French Grand Prix was the beginning of the end for Alfa. They might still be faster and have better brakes, but their extra need for pit stops for fuel was a distinct disadvantage. On the slower circuits, there was every chance that they would not be able to make up the time to allow for this. The 1951 British Grand Prix at Silverstone would prove the point. The Silverstone crowds waited to see if the Ferraris could beat Alfa Romeo, and BRM chose this race to make one of their rare appearances. They were to be overshadowed, however, by the efforts of Ferrari driver Gonzalez. He caused a sensation in practice and caused banner headlines in the Daily Express newspaper when he set the first 100-mile-an-hour lap. In the race, Gonzalez swept into the lead, charging round the circuit in an immense power slide, and soon pulled out a 5-second advantage over Fangio. Fangio was driving with tremendous purpose and pulled out that little bit extra. He overtook Gonzalez to lead by a length. The BRMs, driven by Reg Parnell and Peter Walker, were running reliably, but the drivers were being fried, their feet getting badly burnt by heat from the 16-cylinder engines. Gonzalez retook Fangio, who came into the pits for fuel, leaving Gonzalez well in the lead. Fangio moved back up to second place, but try as he might, he couldn't catch the Ferrari, with Villaraci third, Bonetto fourth, Reg Parnell fifth and Peter Walker seventh. A delighted Froilan Gonzalez receives the winner's garland. He had outdriven Fangio on the day. A fortnight later, it was the German Grand Prix on the formidable Nürburgring. Ascari was fastest in practice from the irrepressible Gonzalez, with Fangio third. At the start, Fangio fought it out with Ascari and Gonzalez, both of whom passed Fangio when he stopped for fuel. Fangio fought back to retake the lead before having to make his second stop. When he returned to the fray, he had gearbox problems and couldn't catch Ascari, having to be content with second place, and Gonzalez finished third. Before the 1951 Italian Grand Prix, Fangio led the World Championship with 27 points, from Ascari on 17, and Farina and Gonzalez both on 15 points. Alfa entered 4 cars, for Fangio, Farina, Bonetto and Emmanuel de Graffenried, while Ferrari had entered 5 cars, for Ascari, Villaraci, Gonzalez, Piero Taruffi and the Brazilian Chico Landi. Fangio and Farina were fastest in practice. At the start, Fangio shot to the front until he lost a tyre tread and had to pit. This let Ascari into a lead which he was never to lose. Farina took over Bonetto's car while Fangio retired. Farina caught Gonzalez for third, only to lose it again at his second pit stop. Ascari, meanwhile, had a shambolic pit stop of his own, leaving the pit in disarray. Farina again caught up with Gonzalez, only to have to stop again with a split fuel tank. He flew out of the pits with fuel streaming along the road behind him. A weary Alberto Ascari won for Ferrari, followed by Gonzalez and Villaraci. A disappointed Farina was fourth. The World Championship was decided at the last round, the Spanish Grand Prix, and the race was over 70 laps, 375 kilometers. The Alfas planned 2 pit stops and used smaller tanks to improve the car's road holding. Ferrari decided to change tyres, using a smaller diameter wheel and larger section tyre, but this was to prove a costly error. Ascari led from the start until Fangio made his bid, caught and passed him. This led to a flat-out battle at terrific speeds, both drivers within centimetres of the wall and rows of spectators. All good things must come to an end, and all of the Ferrari drivers were afflicted with tyre problems. Only Gonzalez made any real impact on the race. He passed Farina for second place, but was unable to catch Fangio. Later, Gonzalez was heard to say, "I'm satisfied to finish second. Fangio is the master." So, Fangio won his first title with 31 points, from Ascari with 25 and Gonzalez with 24. After this tremendous season, what would 1952 be like? During the winter of 1951-1952, the future of Grand Prix racing was being assessed. Would Alfa Romeo continue? Would Mercedes-Benz return to racing with their pre-war W168 V8 supercharged car? Would the BRM be reliable? And would it turn up if it was entered? The race organisers were in a difficult position at the start of the season, with Alfa finally announcing their withdrawal from motor racing. They'd achieved all that they could hope for, and knew that it would be very difficult to improve the cars any further to take on Ferrari. So, one by one, the Grand Prix organisers went over to Formula 2, and eventually the organising body followed suit. Fangio's win in Barcelona in 1951 was the last win for a forced induction car until the advent of the turbocharged era of the 1980s. From its debut in 1938 until its final race in 1951, the Alfetta was one of the most successful racing cars ever built. Willie Green is one of the best-known historic racing car drivers. He had the opportunity to drive this privately owned Alfa Romeo at Goodwood.
It's beautiful, it sounds incredible, and when you get to drive it, it's even better. You can do anything you like with the car, you can play it on the throttle, the steering wheel is very nearly redundant. I mean, it is just perfect. I love it, it's my favourite motor car.
Emilia. Since its very inception, this had been the place where Alfa had excelled. Back in the great days of Varzi and Nuvolari and throughout the 30s, the only driver to break the Italian domination was Rudolf Caracciola in a Mercedes-Benz. Britain's Jaguar and Healey, with Aston Martin, challenged the new king of the Mille Miglia, Ferrari. The Mille Miglia was a race the